Hello. In this short video, we'll be demonstrating the use of CLS America's Thorium VMS product as it's configured for the Gulf of Mexico Charter Boat Electronic Reporting Project. This tablet has already been registered and shows the Thorium home page. If your tablet is not registered, please contact our support team and we will provide details at the end of this video and complete the registration process before proceeding any further. To access the forms, simply push the Forms button. Select Gulf of Mexico, and then finally the form, and there's only one displayed here, the Charter Boat e-logbook, and the form will load. Navigating through Thorium forms is performed by swiping from one side to the other. This first page of the Gulf of Mexico form contains some information about the vessel that we can see here. This information is already populated. The first time you fill out this form, you will have to complete the information, and each time after that, it will remember the information from the previous time that you filled out the form. So in this case, we don't have to change anything. We'll swipe again to go to the second page of this form. And here we're going to enter in the date of the trip departure and where the trip was departing from. And again, in this case, it puts in the current time. If that's acceptable, you don't need to change anything. Otherwise, you can select day, month, and year, or you can select from a calendar just by pushing on the particular day and then changing the time as well. So in this case, we could say the trip left at 10 o'clock this morning. And then we'll scroll down just by using our finger. State of departure, it remembers the last entry. So if you don't need to change anything, that's great. You can just leave it alone. Otherwise, make the proper selection there. And then the date and time of the trip return. And again, it's the same calendar input to get the day. And then maybe we'll put in the time to say the captain returned at 1500. As we swipe to the next page, we'll fill out some information about the actual trip itself. The first element here is a non-charter trip. If you're going out just fishing personally or you're not fishing at all, you can check this box to say this is a non-charter trip. In this case, we'll leave it unchecked, though it's a charter trip. We distinguish between passengers and anglers, so you could say there were 6 people on board. Only 4 of whom were fishing, so 6 passengers, 4 anglers, a number of crew, including the captain, and the number of hours fished for reef fish. So in this case, let's say 3 hours. Oops, we'll have to back up. 3 hours. Where did you spend most of your time fishing? There's 3 answers here: close to the coast, offshore, inland. And then primary target species and secondary target species. These are the fish that you're going after on this trip, that you were looking for. So in this case, we could say greater amberjack. And then optionally, you can enter a second target species that you were hoping to catch that day. We'll say king mackerel. As we swipe to the next page, the system will ask for some optional information about the trip, including the quantity of fuel used. We'll say we used 23 gallons at $3.55 per gallon. It also asks for some information about the depth fished. So we could say minimum depth fished was 50 feet, maximum depth fished 150 feet, and we fished primarily at 75 feet. And when we've entered those in, we're at the bottom of the form. We'll swipe again. As we swipe right, the system will ask, do we want to add a new catch report? The answer, of course, is add group, which is what we're interested in doing here. So what we have here is the dialog to add a species to our catch report. What's interesting to note, you can add as many of these as you need to. For if you have various species that were caught, you can do this dialog over and over again, and we'll go through that. Really, there's only 2 questions that are mandatory, which is the species and the number that were kept. Released alive and released dead are optional answers, but we'll go ahead and answer those during our examples. So let's go ahead and fill one out. An example, we caught some gag grouper, let's say, and we kept 3 of those. We released none of them alive, and let's say we released 1 dead. Now, instead of swiping to go to the next page, in this case we're going to press on this large button at the top to add new species and add another group. This number 1 here indicates that we're on our catch report number 1. As we add a second one, you'll see that number increment, so we know we're on catch report number 2. We can go ahead and again do the same thing. We can say we caught, king mackerel. Let's say we only kept 1 of those, released 0 alive, and released 0 dead. If we want to go back and look at our first catch report, it's possible to swipe back and look at it. So here we're on catch report number 2. I can swipe back and see catch report number 1. Just if I wanted to check something, go back and here's catch report number 2. Let's go ahead and add a third one. So I'll, again, click on this large button, add new species, and you can now see we're on catch report number 3. In this case, we want to demonstrate what happens if it's not on the list. When I click on species, this is the most common fish that are being caught. If it's not something that's on the list, you click on other, and we have a new field here, which is the other species. And as we start typing in there, it will pre-populate from a list of all the species that we have. So in this case, I typed in HE, and here's 2 species with HE in them, so I'll go ahead and select this one. And again, the same dialog, I'm just going to say we kept 5 of those. There's another case where the species may not be on that list, so I've created a 4th one here. Let's again do other. And as I start typing in, let's type in something we know doesn't exist. If we type in XYZ, nothing comes up to select. So in that case, if it's truly an unusual fish that's not on the list at all, there is a final case for other. If you just start typing that in, you'll see it here. So it's other and other, and again, we could put in that we caught 5 of these other fish. When all of the species have been entered, we'll go ahead and swipe from right to left to exit the dialog. This page is the equivalent of a signature. It just says that I've entered all this information, it's true and correct. To sign and acknowledge that, we just push on this checkbox, and you'll see the check mark, and it won't let you continue unless you check that. We'll swipe once more, and here we have a summary of our trip report with all the information that we've entered, all the information about the vessel and the trip itself, and then all the information about the catch report. We can expand and look at those individually if we want to see those. And we can go back to this summary here. If we're happy that everything's been done properly, we push the submit button, and it says please check the submission is acknowledged before turning off your tablet. So we leave the tablet on until the report has actually been transmitted through the satellite system. It's not always instantaneous. Let's go ahead and push that. The way to tell if it's been transmitted or not, we click on this menu at the top, the forms menu, and we go to submissions, and we can see we've submitted 2 reports earlier, and they have a green check mark next to them, which means it was successfully transmitted to the satellite system. The one we just completed, so the newest one's at the top, you can see this icon is spinning, and that means that it's still communicating, or it's attempting to communicate with the satellite system and transmit that, and it will send it, and when it does send it, it will turn green, a green check mark instead of this spinning icon. And there we can see the form was successfully transmitted back to the processing center, and now you could power off your tablet or power off the vessel itself, even if you needed to shut down power to all the VMS equipment. From here you could just go back, and you're back to the main screen at Thorium. There are a number of quality control features built into the Thorium software, and we'll demonstrate a few of those here. So as you're filling out a form, the first thing, there's 3 of them that I'm going to talk about. The first one we'll see is mandatory fields, and a field is mandatory, you can tell, if it's marked with a star. So you can see in this case the vessel name, the Coast Guard dock number, state registration number, and the captain's name are all mandatory fields. And if you try to create a form and leave one of those blank, and as we swipe to the next page, or even go, as we swipe to the next page, it won't let us swipe. It'll say the vessel name is required, and complains until we put something in there. So if we put something in there, you can see that we can swipe to the next page. One of the second quality control features built into the Thorium software relates to multi-day trips. So in this case, let's set up a multi-day trip. We put in we're departing on May 3rd, and let's say we're going to return on May 5th. And the times are good there. Let's swipe to the next page. As we enter in the number of hours fished, in this case let's put in 3 hours, and a warning automatically comes up that says you fished less than 12 hours in 3 days, please double check. And it's really not a hard and fast rule, but it's just informing us that 3 hours seems like a relatively low number of hours to be fishing over 3 days. If we put in a much larger number, let's say we fished for 20 hours, you see that warning disappears. So the system's constantly trying to help out and give you prompts if it thinks something looks unusual. A third quality control feature has to do with the number of fish caught. In some cases, the system will alert you if it thinks you've caught too many fish. So in this case, let's go ahead and we'll add a species group to demonstrate that. We'll go ahead and put in red snapper, for instance. And in this case, we have 5 anglers on board. So I'm going to put in a ridiculously large number of fish that we kept. And as we swipe, the system warns us, please check that the anglers are not over the bag limit, or double check. And this should be a warning that maybe it was a typo, and in that case maybe you said, I really meant to put 9 and I accidentally pushed the 0 to get 90, and if we swipe again after that, it goes ahead and accepts that number as 9, as that's a much more rational number.